Hello everyone, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about GDPR. You might have heard about it. It's a big topic at the moment within the world of data. It's the General Data Protection Regulation. So this is regulation that's coming in. It's being brought in by the EU. Today is actually a very opportune moment to be speaking about it. It'll be exactly 1 year when this comes into enforcement. So it's very, very important that we understand a little bit about it. So what I want to share today is the top line of GDPR, what it means for us, what it means for our clients, and some of the things we need to be thinking about in terms of data protection. So our top line summary is that the GDPR replaces the Data Protection Directive that was introduced in 1995. And there's an important difference between the regulation and directive. So a directive hasn't necessarily had big ramifications for businesses who fail to meet it. As a regulation, this stuff will be highly punishable for those who fail to meet the regulations that are being introduced. It will apply from the 25th of May 2018, and as I said, the fines are going to be significant. It's going to be 20 million euros or 4% of global turnover, whichever is greater, for the most severe penalties for those who fail to meet the regulations I'm about to go through. GDPR really applies to any business who is processing the personal data of an EU citizen. There's also additional regulations for those who are transporting data out of the EU on EU citizens, or for international businesses who are accessing the data of EU citizens. GDPR has been brought in to strengthen the existing data protection rights of individuals within the EU. The idea is that it gives control back to the individuals. This is positive, with the data breaches that are in the news. Rightfully, individuals should have control of their personal data. The other big benefit of this is it aims to unify the regulation across the EU. If all EU members have to conform to the same regulation, it makes it easier for international business to get involved, and it makes it easier to regulate across all of the different countries. So the key requirements that I'm going to go through quickly today are responsibility and accountability, consent, the need for data protection officers, pseudonymization, data breaches, right to erasure, data portability, privacy by design and by default. So a lot of these are quite technical, but what I'm hoping to do is dispel them a little bit today, give you an understanding of what they're about and how it will affect us. There's some terminology which is used throughout the GDPR documentation around data controllers and data processors. So a data controller is an organization or an entity which is collecting the data, defining the means of how the data are processed and how it's being used. So this will largely, from our point of view, this will be our clients, it will be businesses who are collecting the data from their customers. It's the first party. Then you've got data processors, which might be third parties or tools that these data controllers work with. And this will particularly be third parties, so it could be a cloud service, cloud storage provider, which the data controller puts their data into, or it could be third parties like us. If we're receiving personal data from clients, we would be, in that scenario, a data processor. Important to bear those in mind because there's different rules for each of these groups. So first point in GDPR is around responsibility and accountability. There's no more excuses. Businesses, data controllers and data processors will be accountable for the information they hold on their customers. So purely automated decision making. So we talk about machine learning. In finance, for example, the decision whether to lend money or not could be based on a purely automated machine learning algorithm. GDPR brings in legislation to ensure that individuals can dispute the decisions made by these systems. They have the right to request more information about how that decision was made. Data controllers, or our clients, must also be able to demonstrate the compliance in data processing. So they need to be able to demonstrate how they collected the information, that the information was given with consent, which we'll come on to a little bit more. And they also need to be able to demonstrate that the data processing carried out by a third party, so the data processor, also complies with GDPR. Now on consent. Consent must be explicitly given by the user. It's opt-in only. It will not be allowed to have a form that says, I agree to give my email address, that is pre-ticked. Users must actively give consent and they must know full well at the time what they're signing up for, how that data will be used and why it is being collected. Data controllers will also have to give information about how long the data will be valid for, when they will delete it if it has an expiry date, and when that will be. They must be able to prove the consent. For children, any minors must be able to prove that an adult or a guardian gave that consent, and it may be withdrawn at any time from the individual. So any service you sign up to under GDPR, you have the right to be able to request that your information is deleted from the data controller. Data protection officers are also being introduced into this legislation. It's not required for all businesses, but it is encouraged that all businesses should review their data practices and their usage of data. So this will be particularly important for data controllers. So our clients will need to do an audit of the information that they collect from their customers, and they will need to determine whether it's necessary for them to appoint a data protection officer. This is kind of interesting. So this kind of role previously has been perhaps someone in the legal team who is a little bit more clued up on data protection law. But GDPR is stating that this person needs to have a broader set of skills. They need to be covering not just the legal implications of GDPR, but also the technical chops to be able to pull it off and understand whether it is being implemented within the organisation to the technical specifications that are required. So it's quite a tough role. And the role of this individual will be to act as like a mini regulator within the organisation, to ensure that every aspect of personal data is being treated with compliance amongst the organisation. I love this little guy. Data protection audits help companies avert privacy risks and comply with privacy laws. Now this one I can hardly say. I've heard various people talk about pseudonymization, pseudonymization, all sorts of different ways. It sounds a little complicated, but essentially it's basically making data anonymous. One of the ways to do that, which has been talked about a lot, is encryption. But the important bit is that the anonymous user data and any data required to de-anonymize it must be stored entirely separately. So in the case of encryption, you have encryption keys. The keys allow you to encrypt and decrypt the information. If you encrypt it, you must keep those keys separate from your data. GDPR doesn't actually apply to anonymized data, so things like Google Analytics, where we aren't able to tie back the information to an individual, will not be under the jurisdiction of GDPR. GDPR applies to personal data, personally identifiable information, which does include IP addresses. Data breaches, so there's new rules coming in around the breaches of data as well. This is particularly topical because we see so much about it in the news. Obviously with the WannaCry malware going around at the moment, this is a hot topic. So GDPR brings in regulations and guidelines for businesses to be able to handle and disclose data breaches. So they will have a legal obligation to disclose a data breach or a known data breach within 72 hours of discovery to supervisory authorities, which will be appointed within each country. If individual data is impacted, then they must give notification to the individuals if their personal data has been compromised. If the data are anonymized, so if it's encrypted, then the same regulations don't apply. So if my anonymized data is leaked and someone has my encrypted data, or they don't know that it's me, I won't necessarily know about it. But if my personal information, my raw credit card number, my phone number, my address leaks, the controllers who own that data or hold that data on me will be obligated to disclose it. There's also the right to erasure. So we've previously had the right for individuals to be able to access their information. So this goes a little bit further. The individuals have the right to request the erasure of personal data. They have the right to request the erasure of their data from a data controller that they've given their information to. Under a number of different guidelines, they can withdraw their consent at any time. Now, of course, this might mean that the data controller is no longer able to provide the service to them, but that will be the decision of the individual. But it will also now be the responsibility of the data controller, the business who originally collected that data, to inform all of their third parties that request has been made, and the third parties will then have to remove that data too. And this one's particularly interesting, data portability. Now, I've got to admit, this isn't something that I'd heard a huge amount about before GDPR, but GDPR is bringing in new rules that expand upon the right for users to be able to access their information. So as it currently stands, we can make requests to businesses to say, show me all the stuff you've got on me. But business are allowed to charge for that. There's no particular regulation. So data portability not only allows individuals to access their information, but it must be done for free. It must be done with a machine-readable format as an output. So that's something like a CSV or a JSON format. But users also have the right to request that data is sent immediately to another data controller. Organizations will be required to build tools to be able to better comply with these things. That means things like APIs, programmatic interfaces for individuals to access the data that a company holds on them, and then to be able to send it immediately to another data controller. This has massive implications for things like comparison websites. You may have already seen My Data, which is a government initiative to try and standardize the transportation of data from one service to another. But it will mean that you could switch banks just by saying, take all the information that my bank has got, send it to another bank and see if they can give me another deal or a better deal. This will have big implications. And finally, there's privacy by design and by default. Now this one's a little bit more technical. It applies perhaps more to the product development aspects of things and the technical handling and processing of data, but it must be entirely GDPR compliant from the moment the data are collected right the way through all of the data processing that occurs. So there's lots of practices being spoken about, like personal data should only ever be accessed when absolutely required. It shouldn't ever be opened up to individuals who shouldn't have access to it, and it must be compliant along every step of the way. Anonymisation by default, anonymising as early as possible, and so on. Thank you very much.